So today's topic is very important. Okay, it is bronchial asthma management, and we have included the allergic rhinitis part also briefly. So we'll start with bronchial asthma. So first thing is definition. You must have read it in your pathology classes, even in your physiologic classes also. So basically, this asthma is an airway disease, right? Compared to the other, most commonly we have term pneumonia on our tongue. So compared to pneumonia, which is a parenchymal disease, this asthma is a airway disease, right? So there is a chronic airway inflammation of these airways involved, and yes, there is hyperresponsive airway with reversibility. All right, there is reversibility. Like when the patient is exposed to allergens triggers, the airway get constricted, and after some time, this airway reverses to normal position. All right, so asthma can be classified into atopic and non-atopic type. Then exercise-induced asthma, drug-induced asthma, NSAIDs are commonly associated or culprit in causing this. And then there is cough variant type of asthma where the chief complaint is only mild to moderate cough, right? So students who want exact definition, wait, I'm not able to, okay, okay. So those who want exact definition, it is asthma is heterogeneous disease. What is this heterogeneous means? That if 10 people are suffering from asthma, it's not mandate that all of them have similar presentations, right? One person is having just mild cough, person is having mild respiratory distress, one person may present to you with respiratory noise, chest tightness, pain in chest, right? So, and one person may have no symptoms, just breathlessness when he has heavy exercise, right? Heavy activity, right? So this term heterogeneous is applicable to asthma because there is varied presentation, right? And it is usually characterized by chronic airway inflammation. Second point is chronic airway inflammation, all right? And along with this, there should be typical respiratory symptoms like wheeze, shortness of breath, chest tightness, and cough that vary over time and intensity, right? Along with that, there should be variable expiratory airflow limitation. Okay, so these typical respiratory symptoms, wheeze, shortness of breath, chest tightness, and cough can be present in other respiratory illness also. Like in adults, we see COPD patients, but in case of, for example, in case of COPD, the disease has progressed to its maximum intensity. There is no reversibility seen in COPD, whereas in asthma, there is reversibility, that is variable expiratory airflow limitation, right? This is the difference. So in definition, we have to include these terms, that is, one is heterogeneous disease, present variably, has different presentation in different people, characterized by chronic airway inflammation. Then they have typical respiratory symptoms along with, very important, variable expiratory airflow limitation, right? Then what are the triggers? We all know various infections, parainfluenza, influenza, COVID, then respiratory syncytial, all these infections. Then exercise can induce bronchoconstriction. Yes, seasonal variation, they are more common in winter season. And then emotional stress, various type of food particles which can induce allergy, and hormonal. All these are known triggers that can induce symptoms in patients of asthma, right? We are not going into much into this pathology part. So the main thing is there is antigen presenting cells in response to various allergens. Then there is cascade of pathways. Mainly there is activation of mast cells, and this mast cells further induces leukotrienes, which are potent bronchoconstrictor. Then induction of prostaglandins, which causes mucin increase, vasodilatation, increased permeability. Then there are interleukins 4, 5, 13, which also further recruit eosinophils, these cells, and increases mucin. All right, I'm not going into detail of this pathology. Then if we see this slide, this is cross section of the airway, this, and this is normal one, and this is obstructed airway as seen as patient of asthma. All right, so you can see that there is hypertrophy of smooth muscles. You can see here there is hypertrophy of smooth muscle, and there is infiltration of blood vessels, immune cells along this, and there is decreased diameter of this lumen, and there is excessive secretions, mucin secretions, debris secretion, which further limits the airway. All right, can you please hold for a second? Okay, so you can see here there is thickening of the whole affected airway, right? All right, so what are different processes that are going on in this illness? There is, yes, acute inflammation, which are triggered, which is incited by various triggers, which causes bronchoconstriction, and this bronchoconstriction produces various symptoms, right? Then there is chronic airway inflammation, and if it further increases, it leads to airway remodeling, which is irreversible. So in later stages of the illness, there may be persistent airway airflow obstruction, which can be seen, right? So what are the signs and symptoms? Okay, before that I want to tell you that it is a, I'm repeating it, it is a airway disease. So let me check, let me, okay, so I'm drawing it here only. This is normal airway, you can see here, this is normal airway. Okay, during inspiration, right, when we are breathing in, during inspiration, this airway expands, right? This airway expands physiologically. This airway expands physiologically. All right. So more and more air is entering into the lungs. More and more air is entering into the lung. All right. And during expiration in normal person, right? During expiration, this airway will remain same or slightly decreases in constriction, right? Or slightly decreases in constriction. Okay, this is normal physiological behavior of the airways, right? Inspiration, they will expand, so more and more air comes into the lung, right? And during expiration, it constricts. All right. When the person is having asthma, we know that it is a chronic inflammatory disease. There is smooth muscles, thickening of smooth muscles, right? Infiltration of various immune cells. Then there is mucin production, accumulation of debris. All right, and this airway gets narrowed. All right, remember this airway gets narrowed. Now, during inspiration, this airway slightly expands and air enters into the lung with less difficulty in asthmatic patient. All right, during inspiration, this airway expands and air may enter into lungs with less difficulty as compared to the normal person where there is no difficulty at all right. So but during expiration there is further already there is narrowing due to the smooth muscle uh, uh, mucin production, smooth muscle bundling. All right, so during expiration, when person exhales, an asthmatic exhales, there is further narrowing of this already narrowed airway. We compare it to this. All right, so during expiration, this air will move out of the lungs very slowly. All right, very slowly, because there is narrowing here. All right, so just this physiology, this basic principle will help us in the coming slides to differentiate many things, right? So this narrowing during expiration will further produces difficulty in exhaling the air out of the lungs. All right, so what are the common presenting symptoms? So what are the common presenting symptoms? Yes, cough, fast breathing, difficulty in breathing, PND, orthopnea. What is PND? Paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. And what is orthopnea? Difficulty in breathing when patient is in ortho position, lying down. All right. Whereas in paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, there is sudden presentation, or you can say worsening of symptoms at night. Sudden development or worsening of symptoms at night, like patient usually wake up around 3 to 4 a.m. suddenly telling you that I'm feeling chest tightness, bouts of cough, difficulty in breathing in case of PND. While in orthopnea, whenever like patient whenever try to lie down, immediately means after 10 to 15 seconds, 30 seconds, patient develop difficulty in breathing. So in PND, basically it is during deep sleep, stage 3, 4, REM sleep. During deep sleep, there is vasoconstriction of the vessels, which produces symptom in already diseased person, right? Whereas in orthopnea, if the patient is having congestive cardiac failure, so in that case, whenever patient try to lie down, there is distribution of fluid to the apex in lying position, and patient will present you the symptoms like difficulty in breathing, breathlessness, all right. So this is basic difference between PND and orthopnea. And then yes, patient may present with chest pain. If the constriction is very severe, uh, yes, patient may present with cyanosis in that case, and cyanosis, prolonged cyanosis may result in irritability, drowsiness, lethargy, altered sensorium, and also seizures, which are hypoxic seizures. All right. So these are common presenting symptoms. Now we move to okay. So we move to signs. We start with general physical examination. Yes, patient may have tachypnea, tachycardia, may have low SpO2. Please remember this SpO2 has been added into journal physical examination part, vitals part, and then journal appearance. Patient may be irritable, has poor sensorium. Then you have to note for cyanosis, presence of clubbing, which denotes that disease is chronic. Yes, clubbing may be seen in asthmatics, and presence of lymphadenopathy or not, right? Then you have to note signs of atopy, allergy. It is very important. You have to look for skin rashes, may find eczema, and then there is presence of skin fold in lower eyelids, bilateral lower eyelids, which is known as Denys Morgan folds or Denys line. Then you may see that the patient is having slightly deviated bony nasal septum, that is allergic salute. Then we have allergic Shiner's sign. Then yes, conjunctivitis has to be noted. It could be flictanular type in case of TB. Then yes, patient may breathe with open mouth, which is also a sign of allergy. All right, mouth breathers. So in first picture, you can see here folds of lower conjunctiva, not conjunctiva, lower eyelid. These are Denys line. All right. Then you can see below lower eyelid this purplish violet colored skin pigmentation, which is known as allergic Shiner's. Then this is allergic salute sign. Patient has usually have associated allergic rhinitis, symptoms of rhinorrhea. So they have habit of doing this salute over the nose. All right, then you can have see, because of this you can see a line, hyperpigmented line or fold at the nasal bone and septal bridge, between nasal bone and septal bridge. All right, okay. Then we go to chest examination. We have already discussed that when there is narrowing of air, all right, these are all smooth muscles hypertrophy. Inside we have debris secretions. Now during inspiration, this expands slightly. This airway expands slightly during inspiration. What happens? This air will enter into the lungs. Air will enter into the lungs. All right. Air is entering into the lungs. While this is during inspiration, and during expiration, this further constricts. All right. This further constricts. All right. During and yes, this further constricts. Then from the lung, this air will move very slowly to the outer environment, right? Because there is narrowing, and during expiration this narrowing further increases, and this air is moving out of lungs very slowly. All right, so even before the expiration ends, the next stimulus of inspiration begins, and this air emptying will not occurs completely in this asthmatic patients, right? So gradually there will be air trapping inside the lung. All right, air is not emptying completely, and there is air trapping inside the lungs. Hope you're okay. Someone is asking what is the cause of allergic Shiner's. There is skin pigmentation, violet or purplish skin pigmentation, that is secondary to uh, hyperallergens. Like we see similar skin color or skin changes over the eczematous parts, wherever there is pressure over bony points like over elbows and over knees, there is skin changes. Similarly, there is similar type of changes over the maxillary prominence area, just below the lower eyelids. Exact mechanism, if you are asking me the physiology, pathophysiology behind it, I don't know. So I will tell you when we meet physically. All right. So this is the cause. So okay. Then chest examination, yes. So there is air trapping. So what will this air trapping do? It produces hyperinflated chest, barrel-shaped chest, hyperinflated chest. All right. On percussion, you may find there is a lot of air inside the lung. You may find hyper-resonant note on percussion, right? Then one more thing, second thing, if this air moves through a narrow airway instead of a normal diameter airway, if this air moves through this narrow airway, then what type of sound it produces? It produces musical sound, CT like sound, whistle like sound. What is that? It is called, all of you are telling wheeze, thinking of wheeze. No. Yes, it is called wheeze, but it is called bronchi. All right. Bronchi, if you are using stethoscope over chest for auscultation, and it is known as wheeze when you are using, when the sound is audible using our naked ears. Okay. If you are using stethoscope, all right, you are using stethoscope to hear these musical polyphonic notes, it is termed as ronca. Don't say wheeze for that. All right. If yes, it is audible externally, patient is giving history that हमें तो इसमें सीटी जैसी साए साए आवाज सुनाई देती है बच्चे में, तो yes, these are wheeze. All right. And this wheeze indicates that the disease is severe, the constriction is severe. All right, compared to ronca. Now next is crackles. Crackles. All right, what are crackles? So this is the airway. I'm drawing it here. This is constricted airways. All right, narrow out lumen. Then inside the lumen, there is secretion, mucin production, debris, cellular debris. All right, at different sites. All right. So whenever the air is moving inside via this path, all right, whenever there is movement of air inside this path, this mucin secretion will move along this with the air movement. All right. So this will produce a noisy sound like a water is moving inside a bottle. If you take an empty bottle, plastic bottle, you may find drops of water inside that bottle, the ribs of the bottle, and when you blow air through that, you may hear the sound of these small water droplets moving inside, right? Similarly, in the alveoli, when this fluid is moving during inspiration, this will produce noise like water bubble is bursting. These are known as crackles, all right, not creps, crackles. Crepitations term is used. Wait, there is some. Yes, I'm telling you. Question by Nilayan Sarkar. Sir, why crackles in asthma, not in pneumonia, right? Your question is this, right? So yes, let me explain it with a case of pneumonia. This is alveoli. All right. These are sacules inside the alveoli. Okay. Then during pneumonia, there is inflammation of the lung parenchyma. This inflammation of lung parenchyma. There are various stages of pneumonia. There is consolidations. red hepatization, then gray hepatization, then fibrosis. All right, if we consider it as a stage of red hepatization, so there will be inflammation all around the alveoli or involvement of lung parenchyma, not this airway. So there will be secretion of fluid. It could be mucin, serous fluid, or even pus, and it will may get collected inside the alveoli. Alveoli may get collapse. All right, alveoli may get collapse. Now, in this disease part of the lung, when air goes inside, air moves and will come out. So these fluid particles also move along with this air, and the collapsed part of the alveoli will also try to partially open up, right? So this movement of fluid inside the alveoli and opening of the collapsed part and shifting of this fluid produces sound like bubbles are bursting. All right, similar sound. So it is called as crackles. Whereas the question is, in case of asthma, yes, instead of this alveoli sac, there is airway, narrowed airway, and there is secretion of fluids inside this airway. All right, secretion of fluids inside the airway. And during inspiration and expiration, this fluid mucin will move along with the movement of air and will produce similar sound. Instead, it is more louder than the crackles seen in cases of pneumonia, right? So, crackles can be seen in patients with uh, asthma. All right. I hope I have answered the question right. Nilayan. All right. Nilayan. Okay, so on chest examination in airway disease, now it's very easy to remember this. In airway disease, there is hyperinflated chest on inspection. Then on percussion, you may get hyperresonant, not may, you will get 100% hyperresonant chest if the patient is suffering from airway disease, unless it is very mild. Then you may find rhonchi. If it is more severe, can be heard externally without stethoscope, then it is wheeze. Then yes, crackles may be present. And in case of airway disease, crackles can be both inspiratory and expiratory, whereas in pneumonia, they are mainly inspiratory, right? Uh, this is for postgraduate students only. You just know that crackles can be found in cases of patients suffering with airway disease or cases of asthma, right? If this constriction is very severe, right, just you may found there is very diminished or absent air entry, right? It is a very ominous sign. Patient has to be immediately taken into intensive care unit, may need intubation. So absence air entry or auscultation of air in the asthmatic patient has to be considered very seriously. Okay. So what are key indicators for considering diagnosis of asthma? The presence of typical history, intermittent symptoms, yes, which denotes reversibility, right? Intermittent symptoms. Then association of symptoms to the triggers, weather change, dust, smoke, exercise, infection, pollen, emotional stress, chemical dust. Then yes, presence of diurnal variations, presence of family history, very important, and presence of atopy, allergic rhinitis, skin allergies, very important, right? Okay. Then we have early childhood risk factors assessment for persistent asthma. Yes, if there is major criteria, then minor criteria. Major criteria, if there is presence of history of allergy like eczema. Parents are suffering from asthma, and there is proven inhalant allergen sensitization. These are all major criteria. Then minor presence of allergic rhinitis, wheezing apart from seasonal cold, then more than 4% eosinophils, and food allergen sensitization. Then we may predict that the child is possibly suffering from early onset asthma. All right. Whereas apart from this possibility, how we make definite diagnosis? Yes, we make definite diagnosis using few investigation. The most important one is doing lung function test. All right, lung function test. So how do we diagnose a case of asthma? Typical respiratory symptoms, then demonstration of expiratory airflow limitation using lung function test. So what are these lung function tests? Before lung function test, there are yes few blood investigations like eosinophilia and Ig level. There are not specific, can be found in any allergic conditions, so they are not specific, but yes, you can use them to aid your diagnosis, nothing much. Then similarly, the radiological investigation, you can rule out other etiology like foreign body ingestion, tuberculosis by doing radiological investigations, but specific tests that can be performed is spirometry and allergy test. Now these days allergy tests are outdated because we have so many allergens which can induce this symptom. So these tests are outdated. So we have left with one test only, that is spirometry. All right. So what is spirometry? So the child is blowing the air through a device. Inside this device, there is a sensor which will sense the speed and the speed on the timing axis. It's actually a software. There is inside there is a sensor which will sense the speed and volume of air that has been passed through this tubing. All right. So this machine is like this. This is a mouthpiece, and it is connected to the either this small size device or a computer. So we may get this type of curves. All right. This upper peak is inspiratory, lower one is expiratory. Here, this one is this x-axis is in time in seconds, then this axis is in volume. This is 1 second, 2 second. So it could be FEV. FEV means forced expiratory volume during 1 second, forced expiratory volume during 2 second, and 3rd second. On this axis we have volumes, right? So it is assumed that during 1st second, maximum means around 70 to 80% of uh, lung air expelled out during this. So this FEV1 signifies if there is constriction, there is a lot limitation, this FEV1 will decrease very significantly. All right. Whereas the FVC, forced vital capacity, which is almost equivalent to the vital capacity, tell you the capacity of your lung, the amount of total air your lung can handle. Whereas FEV1 tells you the presence of obstruction or not really. All right. So let me change this slide. All right. So using this spirometry, we can differentiate between obstructive and restrictive type of lung diseases. Basically, obstructive type of lung diseases are where mainly there is problem with etiology with airway. It could be trachea, bronchus, primary, secondary, tertiary, could be obstruction in these segment of the lungs. Whereas restrictive, there could be involvement of airways along with parenchyma, interstitium, and external thoracic cage, all can be involved in restrictive type of pulmonary diseases. All right. So FEV1, yes, in obstructive they may get decreased. Yes, in restrictive they may get decreased. Force vital capacity in obstructive type it is normal to high. If we go back, there is airway constriction. Air is entering inside the lungs in asthmatic with slight difficulty, but during expiration there is more difficulty in expelling the air out of the lung, and there is air trapping inside the lungs. All right. So in airway, this FVC will be normal to high in case of obstructive, wherein restrictive there is low. This vital capacity will be low. Force vital capacity will be low. So to differentiate between the two, we need this ratio FeV1 to FVC. In obstructive type, it is low, whereas in restrictive type, it is preserved. So what is FeV1 to FVC ratio in normal patients? In adults, it has to be more than 80%, and in pediatric patients, in children, it has to be more than 90%. If it is less than it, then we may keep the possibility of obstructive type of airway disease, not asthma. Yes, in asthma also you can see FEV1 by FVC low. In other diseases also you can, like COPD, you can get FEV1 and FVC low, but for asthma we have to check for reversibility. If reversibility is also present, which is not seen in COPD, then you label it as asthma, right? So to see reversibility, what we do, we just give bronchodilator and measure the change in uh, expiratory vital capacity, this FEV1. So if it is more than 12%, that is indicative of that patient is suffering from asthma. There is presence of reversibility, right? One more thing I want to add, we have discussed that the disease is heterogeneous. So if the patient is having asthma and he's having mild symptoms, like whenever he do rigorous exercise, heavy physical activity, he develops symptoms. Otherwise, he is normal. So it is not necessary if this spirometry comes out to be negative in that patient, so the patient is not suffering from asthma. All right. If it is positive, yes, along with this reversibility, yes, it tells that patient is suffering from asthma. If it is negative, it does not exclude the disease. All right. So one more device we have. These days we are not using it. However, this is very handy device, can be kept in pocket, and there is marking red, yellow, and green over there. So we just tell patient to forcefully exhale along this tubing. So if this indicator is at green zone, it says it is normal. If it is at yellow, the patient has to visit the doctor, treating physician, and if it is at red, then he has to go immediately to the emergency department. All right. So this pyrometer, this peak flow meter, can be used for monitoring at home. All right. So one more important thing in this is, this device is, we tell patient, beta लंबा सांस खींचो and then छोड़ो सांस इस pipe के through. What do you think, at beyond what age you can instruct these, you can give these instructions to a patient, to a child? Yes. So at before 5 years of age, it is very difficult to conduct this spirometry in the pediatric age group, right? So this test has value, or it is conducted preferably after 6 years of age, and before that, diagnosis remains dilemmatic, right? So we have several methods we can use in small children. This is pulse oscillometry. All we do, all what we say to the patient, you just hold this mouthpiece in your mouth. The machine itself will deliver the air into patient lungs, right, through pressure oscillations, and will be measured using a computer. Other method is body plethysmography, where the patient's body is kept inside a closed chamber, which is the atmospheric pressure inside the chamber is controlled outside using a computer, and the difference between the pressure movement changes generated by patient's lung inside the chamber is recorded using this device. In second picture, you can see it. In first picture, this machine will produce uh, oscillatory pressure changes, which is read by this device. Okay, now we will come to differential diagnosis. So quickly, I want to tell you the differential diagnosis are upper respiratory tract infection, closed diagnosis, differential diagnosis, we have inhaled foreign body, then bronchiectasis, primary ciliary dyskinesia, congenital heart disease, bronchopulmonary dysplasia. Now we'll come to management part. So remember that there is no cure. You cannot alter the genes that are defective producing the illness. You cannot alter them. All right. Yes, but because of that defect, the symptoms, things that are produced inside the body, inside the lung parenchyma, inside the airway, you can control them with several medications. All right. So patient को whenever you are counseling, do not say that कि ये दवाई लो इससे ठीक हो जाएगा. But by giving these medications, the disease can be controlled. You have to tell patient कि अगर आप जितना जल्दी आफ्टर मेकिंग कंफर्मिंग डायग्नोसिस आप जितना जल्दी दवाई स्टार्ट करोगे, जो बीमारी का प्रोग्रेशन है आप उसको उतना बेटर कंट्रोल कर सकते हो, रोक भी सकते हो, मगर रिवर्स और एलिमिनेट नहीं कर सकते बॉडी से, राइट? So long term strategy, we have to identify and eliminate the triggers. So no triggers, so no inflammation, then no progression of the disease, right? Then we have pharmacological therapy and very important education of parents and patients. So why it is important? We have seen that if you tell patient that we have to start MDI in them, these patients, then they say no doctor, हम ये सब start नहीं करेंगे, और because we have been told, और उनका ये विश्वास होता है कि once these pumps are started, they have to be given for lifelong. All right, yes, they are partially true, but if you start them early, you can gradually decrease the doses, and you can come to a point when it is only used when the symptoms are present. All right. So yes, so this education of parents is very important. So, all right. So we have non-pharmacological management, basically removal of the triggers. I'm not going into details of this. Healthy diet, reduction of obesity, decreasing airway pollution. Then we have pharmacotherapy drugs. We have bronchodilators, ethylene, steroids, mast cell modifiers, leukotriene modifiers. So pharmacological management, we have to do assessment of symptom control, assessment of risk of exacerbation, selection of medication. Then we have to select appropriate device, very important. Then we have to monitor the patient, right? So before starting any treatment. First thing, you have taken history, you have performed spirometry, and you found that patient is having FEV1 to FVC of 72%, and yes, there is reversibility of more than 14%, and you have labeled the patient. Yes, there is history of similar illness of asthma in grandfather, and yes, mother is suffering from allergic skin disease, eczema, and the child is also having associated allergic rhinitis symptoms, right? So you have diagnosed the child with asthma. Now, which drug you have to start, whether how to decide, right? Okay, for to decide that, we have to classify the asthma severity. All right, to decide that, we have to classify asthma severity. Then we will be able to choose appropriate treatment plan. All right, once the treatment is started, the patient is having good control, right? How do we define good control? We will check it in the coming slides. Then we have to step down the treatment if the patient is having good control. If the control is poor, we have to step up the treatment. Before making a step up, please ensure several things, like I will discuss this in coming slides, right? So how do we assess the symptoms? This chart you have in your books, I'm not going into detail. Basically, we have to check the presence of daytime symptoms in a week, nighttime symptoms in a month. Use of long-acting beta agonist is equivalent to daytime symptoms, right? Whenever the patient is having daytime symptom, patient is using long-acting beta agonist. So these 2 points are similar, same. All right. Then physical limitation and presence of acute exacerbations. So this is the chart. We classify as per these symptoms. It is different for age less than 4 years and more than 5 years. And we have intermittent type, mild persistent, moderate persistent, and severe persistent. Okay. All right. If the patient falls into mild persistent, we have to start from step 2. The wait. The patient is having severe persistent, we may have to start with step 4 or 3. If a patient is having intermittent, we have to start from step 1. All right, so what are these steps? In step 1, we have to give low dose inhaled corticosteroids whenever short acting beta agonist or bronchodilators are taken. Previously, it was only short-acting beta agonist. Very important. This change has been made last year only. Previously, it was just bronchodilator whenever the patient is having mild symptoms. Now we know that if the patient is diagnosed asthma, we know that it is a chronic inflammatory process. If we want to really slow down the progression, and if we start the patient on inhaled corticosteroids early, we will really slow down the disease process. So keeping this factor in mind, the change has been made. Whenever the patient is taking low dose inhaled whenever the patient is taking bronchodilators, it has to be taken along with inhaled corticosteroid. Also, there are several studies. It was noted that in the studies, it was noted that the patient who are taking SABA alone have more frequent exacerbation episodes, right? So yes, those patients who are taking SABA alone has more frequent exacerbations episode, right? And the severity of disease was noted more in those patients. So it was decided that when SABA alone has never to be taken in this treatment part of the disease. All right, so in step 1, whenever the patient is having symptoms, he has to take bronchodilators, but along with inhaled corticosteroid. Now step 2, daily low dose inhaled corticosteroid has to be started, whether the patient is having symptoms or not. All right, in step 3, low dose inhaled corticosteroid along with long acting beta agonist, or you just increase this low dose to medium dose. All right, in step 4, yes, the dose has to be medium dose and LABA has to be also present in step 4. Step 5, further assessment has to be done, right? Okay, so this is low dose, medium and high dose dose of inhaled steroids. Beclomethasone, budesonide, fluticasone furoate is easily available in our country for use of inhaled corticosteroid, and the dose is just 100 double. So low dose between 100 to 200, medium 200 to 400, high dose is more than 400. And for beclomethasone budesonide, it is same. Fluticasone, it is half of the above, and you don't need to remember these dosages. All right, then we come to selection of device. We have these devices. These are called MDI, that is metered dose inhalers. This blue one is bronchodilators. This red one is steroids. Then this green one is mixture of blue and pink. Will it give green color? No. Blue and red? No. Okay. So there is one question from someone. Yes, Shreya Sood. He is asking, in case of mild intermittent asthma, we never use daily administration of drugs for control. Yes, there is controversy. If the patient is less than 6 years of age, in which we suspect that after some period, these episodes, like before 6 years of age, you cannot perform spirometry, so you cannot label the patient as asthmatic, right? But using several parameters we discussed, like presence of family history of asthma, presence of allergy, eczema, eosinophilia, on that basis, if we label a child early onset asthma, yes, we can start these drugs. But if the symptoms decreases and we perform spirometry at the age of 6 to 7 6 at the age of 6 years, and we found no reversibility, normal FEV1 to FVC ratio, which can be found in asthmatic also, but absence of symptoms, resolution of symptoms, yes, you can stop these drugs. All right, whereas in patient more than 6 years of age, you have confirmed the disease using spirometry and started these drugs, you have to start it for long period. All right, even in intermittent phase, you can decide whether you have to start it at low dose or you have to give it whenever the symptom is present, along with whenever the symptom is present, you have to give steroids along with beta agonists, bronchodilators. So this is a controversial part. So if the patient is having mild intermittent disease less than 5 years of age, you don't have to start these. You have to just give whenever the patient is having symptom, give Asthaline along with Budecort whenever it is required. The patient is more than 6 years of age, you have confirmed the disease using spirometry, you have to start Budecort low dose inhalation, and some prefer to wait further, like 7 to 8 years, 9 years. Even at this period of age, 8, 9, 10 years, the disease goes away. All right, if it is not confirmed asthmatic, right? So as I said, even if the spirometry is negative, you cannot rule out the disease. You cannot exclude the asthma. It all depends on the combination of the symptoms patient is having and the spirometric finding. If the spirometric findings are present, yes, you are sure the disease is there, You have to start the to put the patient on treatment. Early you start, uh, early you halt the progression of the disease. All right. Then this is a rotahilar type of device. We put capsule of uh, powder drug inside this device. Then the patient rotates it. Powder falls into the chamber and inhale it. All right. These are not used. This is spacer. This is spacer with mask at the mouthpiece end. These are various type of spacers. Then we have nebulizers used in emergency conditions at hospitals or even at homes. Now, if the patient is less than 4 years of age, you can use MDI plus spacer and face mask. All right. If the patient is more than 4 years, we have to use MDI along with spacer. If the patient is 12 years and above, you can directly use meter dose inhaler, but it is preferable to tell patient to use spacer along with MDI. All right. So in first picture, patient is using MDI with spacer. So it is recommended that all children more than 4 years and less than 12 years has to use this spacer, right? So in the second picture, the patient age appears more than 4 years of age. Otherwise, this mask has to be used along with spacer in patients who are less than 4 years of age. Now, other treatment, then we have leukotriene receptor antagonist. The drug is montelukast. As a standalone therapy, it has very low efficacy, lower than inhaled corticosteroids. So it has greater efficacy in preventing exercise-induced asthma and drug-induced asthma, right? Exercise-induced asthma and drug-induced asthma. And also it has been seen that it provides symptomatic control in patient of asthma with concomitant rhinitis, leukotriene receptor antagonist. So three conditions: exercise induced, drug induced, and asthma who are having concomitant rhinitis. All right. So leukotriene are used in these three conditions. Then we have theophylline, nudocromyl sodium, sodium chromoglycate. These drugs are not used now. All right. In pediatrics, I know about pediatric only. Adults, I don't know whether they are using it or not. So in pediatric, we are not using theophylline, sodium chromoglycate, and nudocromyl sodium. Now monitoring, we have to follow up the patient. Check every time. We have to check the technique and compliance with drug. We tell patient to maintain symptoms diary. Then only we can decide the patient is having good control or the patient is having poor control or partial control, right? So this is very important to tell patient to make a record. So then there is three terms: well controlled, not well controlled, poor controlled. These all are present. Uh, all are based and classified as per the daytime, nighttime symptoms, physical activity, use of long acting, short acting beta agonist, and exacerbation, as it was asked in the classification part, right? So according to that, if a patient is having well controlled asthma, then we may consider step down of the treatment. Like if a patient is on step 3 part of the treatment, we can, if we on follow up we found that patient is well controlled, then we may step down it to step 2. All right. If the patient is not well controlled, then we step up the treatment. All right. So it is very important before stepping down or not stepping down, before stepping up the treatment, you have to check the technique, the compliance, right? Whether patient is taking medications or not, whether the patient is having right technique of inhaling the medication or not, right? Before stepping up or stepping down the treatment. It's very simple now. Okay. Now we'll come to acute exacerbation part. So acute, what is exacerbation? Any increase in symptoms is called exacerbation of asthma. So exacerbation is classified into mild, moderate, or severe. It all depends on these various factors: sensorium, difficulty in breathing, speech present or not, accessory muscles use, pulsus paradoxus, PEFR, SpO2. This is all given in your book. I'm not discussing it. So child with eczema exacerbation, immediately we have to quickly assess the child. We have to check for pulse, heart rate, SpO2, immediately withdraw the ABGs. We have to order the X-ray. Then during the first hour of management, immediately apply oxygen if the SpO2 is less than 92%, right? If it is less than 92%, immediately apply oxygen. Then start nebulization using nebulizer. All right. Start nebulizing using nebulizer. I'm not discussing dose here. Then next is steroid therapy, hydrocortisone 10 mg per kg. Stat has to be given. Then can be repeated with half dose of the same. All right. Then we have tropium nebulization. Then after 1 hour, we have to reassess the patient. All right. It is then classified into moderate or severe. If peak expiratory flow is less than 60 to 80%, then it is moderate. If it is more than 60%, then it is severe, or presence of moderate or high severe symptoms also help in differentiating them between moderate and severe. So for moderate, treatment is continuation of oxygen, beta 2 agonist, hypertropium, then oral steroids, and reassessment every 1 to 3 hours until improvement. In severe cases, we have to continue the above treatment along with the new thing, intravenous magnesium sulfate at the dose of 25 to 75 mg per kg. This magnesium is a potent bronchodilator, right? Bronchodilator. All right. Reassess the patient. If good response, then further decrease the treatment. Incomplete response, continue the same treatment. Keep checking peak expiratory flow in between. Monitor the vitals, including SpO2. If the patient is having poor response, we have to admit him to ICU. In incomplete response, not responding after 1 hour previous and 1 to 2 hours this, after 3 hours, then straight away admit the patient in ward. If patient is having good response after 1 to 3 hours, you can plan to discharge the patient. All right. Not going into detail. Now we come to quickly, we will discuss the allergic rhinitis part. So what is allergic rhinitis? It is inflammation of nasal cavity lining, right? All the pathophysiology, immunogenicity is almost similar to asthma. We are not going into detail. That is why we have also clubbed this allergic rhinitis along with asthma. It affects 40% of the normal population individuals, right? And 40% of those who are having allergic rhinitis, out of them 70% may have associated asthma, right? So that is why we are discussing this rhinitis part here. It is also known as rhinosinusitis, as sinus membrane is also involved in this. It is classified into IAR or PER. So IAR is intermittent type of allergic rhinitis, and PER, this is some may confuse you. PE means, previously it was, the term was perennial. PE is persistent type of rhinitis. IAR is intermittent allergic rhinitis, PER is persistent allergic rhinitis. So this is classification. So how do we classify whether the patient is having intermittent or persistent type? In asthma, we have several factors like daytime symptoms, nighttime symptoms, use of SABA, LABA, and activity, presence of number of exacerbation. On that basis, we used to classify the asthma into intermittent, mild, moderate, persistent type of asthma. And according to that classification, we start the patient on step, the equivalent step part of the treatment, right? In allergic rhinitis, how do we classify it, right? This is ARIA classification. So we have classified it into IAR, intermittent allergic, or persistent allergic type. In intermittent and persistent, it could be intermittent mild or intermittent moderate to severe type, or it could be persistent mild or persistent moderate to severe type, right? Intermittent if symptoms are less than 4 days per week or for less than 4 consecutive weeks. Persistent if it is more than the above described, right? Mild and moderate severe. If these 4 things are present, it is moderate to severe. If these 4 things, any one of them is present, it is moderate to severe, and absence of all of these is classified into mild type. So what are these things? Presence of sleep disturbance, disturbance of daily activity, poor performance in school and work, and other troublesome symptoms. If any one of them is present, it is classified into moderate to severe, or if they are present less than 4 weeks, 4 days per week, or less than 4 consecutive weeks, it is intermittent type, otherwise persistent. So diagnosis is based on nasal symptoms, rhinitis, nasal irritation, itching, then ocular symptoms, ocular itching, hyperemia, congestion, watery discharge, purulent discharge, then presence of chest symptoms along with it, signs of allergy we have already discussed. We have to do ear, nose, and throat examination. In ear, the patient may be suffering from serous otitis media, that has to be looked. Then on nose, you have to see the color of mucosa, presence of hypertrophy, presence of nasal polyps or not, presence of DNS you can also examine. In throat, you have to check for lymph node tissues hypertrophy, you can check for post nasal drip, right? Chest examination, we have already discussed it. So treatment is avoid allergens. You can use oral antihistaminics, yes, in the mild cases. Nasal antihistaminic sprays are there in intermittent to mild persistent cases. And you can use intranasal corticosteroid. So we have mometasone drug which can be used. I will tell you in the next slide. So what are the main treatment of this is intranasal corticosteroids. So what are the indication if the patient falls into moderate to severe type of persistent allergic rhinitis, or the patient is having any type of rhinitis, intermittent or moderate, but there is presence of nasal polyps, which is usually seen in moderate to severe type of PER, type of allergic rhinitis. And the third indication is if there is no response to these drugs, oral antihistaminic, nasal antihistaminic, then there is no choice. We have to step apart treatment in this case also, right? So these drugs we have available: fluticasone furoate, mometasone is approved for use in more than 12 years, fluticasone propionate more than 4 years, budesonide more than 6 years. All right. So thank you. I hope you liked the presentation, the explanation method. I don't know how many of you are attentive, but